Welcome to the latest episode of FiftyForward Exchange, a video series produced by Nashville nonprofit FiftyForward. The goal of FiftyForward Exchange is to exchange information and ideas that are important to the older adult population. I'm Sallie Hussey, and it really is my honor to be the CEO of FiftyForward. It's also my pleasure to have our guest with us today, Dan Surface. Dan, so happy that you're here with us today.
Welcome. My pleasure and my honor.
Ooh, thanks. So Dan is a certified life coach who works particularly with men. Dan is also a published poet. And Dan, I think you currently facilitate like several men's group, a local retired group. I particularly love this name, Bold and Golden. Is that right?
That's right.
Great. You know, Dan, you and I have known each other for probably quite a few years, and you are just a wonderful friend of mine. You're a great friend of FiftyForward, the community, and you and I have talked recently. You know, now more than ever, I think what you're doing is so vitally important, and we wanted to talk a little bit more about that today. So we both know that isolation can have such a devastating effect and impact on individuals, and you know, you add in what has happened over this last year. I think I wanted to start today by asking you, what kind of toll do you think all of this and isolation has had on older adults, and particularly those in your circles?
Well, I think, as you already said, I mean, so many older people already suffer from isolation, and with the pandemic, it just magnified it. You know, realizing that so many elders could rely on being with family, if they were lucky enough to have them in the same city, or you know, or whether they traveled, or there might be social services available to them, community centers, programs like FiftyForward, and then programs through their church, synagogue, or mosque. All of those have been shut down, basically.
Right.
And so, you know, it's that much more difficult. And of course, because older people are more likely to live alone, to be widow or widower, it's, you know, it just makes things that much more precarious, I think, and both emotionally, I mean, just health-wise for elders in general.
You know, I know you work with men a lot in your work. Do you see there's a difference at all between how men deal with isolation and women?
I think there's a definite difference.
Really?
I think women have that advantage. Women are, I mean, I want to say naturally, I think, more social. I think men, because we're brought up in a way and in a culture, a kind of a John Wayne kind of thing, where it's difficult for them to ask for help. I think women don't have so much of an issue with that, and as a result, I mean, and I've been, you know, involved in different men's groups for many years, and one of the biggest difficulties when I'm trying to recruit a man into a circle is their ability to acknowledge that they need help, and that they are longing for support, particularly with other men, I think, when they're isolated. And they can be isolated even if they're in a marriage, and you know, but they're not telling their wife what's going on. Often she's the first one that sees the problem, and maybe reaching out to say, I'd really like to, you know, you should go to this group, or you should connect with this group. And so, because they have difficulty asking for help, and you know, they're emotionally in denial, I think that sets them up for you know, for staying in isolation and suffering all the damage that was going to cause.
So you touched on it a little bit. You know, you actually answered my question before I could ask. Why do you think men struggle with connection? Maybe the John Wayne culture, or they just haven't been brought up in that way. Maybe making this a little more personal. But when did you sort of realize you needed to reach out and start making those connections? I know you're not a psychologist, but
Right.
You've been doing this for a while and doing it really successfully, making some of those connections with other men. So clearly you realized gosh, I've got to make some connections with other men? How did that start for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was a case of, pre-pandemic. I was retired from the 9 to 5, and so many of my friends were still in the 9 to 5. So it's hard to stay connected. And you almost feel like you don't have a lot in common anymore. And I think for men in general, we struggle with the after 9 to 5. We're brought up to, love our work, and we define ourselves pretty much, in many cases, completely by our work. And when that's gone, we lose identity, we struggle. For me, afterwards, I mean, because I had been involved in men's groups for many, many years, I was, I consider myself more of a Renaissance man in that, I was writing poetry and reading a lot and staying as fit as I can and, hiking, just a lot of different things I was doing, but a lot of that I was doing by myself. And I think that I recognized as I longed for more male companionship, it just turned out that most of my best friends were in Colorado, which is where the men's group is I've been active with for over 25 years, so it wasn't like they were next door. Sure. And so I really, and I think also I recognized that, that this was isolation. It wasn't good for me. It wasn't good for my health. And that's when I said, well, there's got to be other men out there just like me. Sure. And so that's why I wanted to start the Retired Men's Group, and you know about that because Sure. You co-sponsor it. I mean, FiftyForward does. So I said, yeah. So I just approached Mental Health America Mid-South, where I'm on the board initially, and then got you guys involved too, where you you hosted that lunch, and men came, and some approached me and said, yeah, I want to be part of this group. And so that's really where it came from for me, just recognizing I'm not alone.
You were clearly ready to reach out, and you understood that you needed those connections. What would you say to other men maybe in this stage in their life who, especially right now during this time, who aren't ready to take that step, but who might need to take that step to reach out and make those connections? How would you encourage them to say, okay, it's time?
You have to reach out. I mean, okay. it's and there's, I think there's a number of avenues. It may be, again, through their church, mosque, or synagogue, where there may be ongoing programs. Even with the pandemic, we know, just like what we're doing now, that we can do things through the internet, and we can't do face-to-face anymore. Sure. And there's certainly, I think, opportunities for that in social services, but it takes a proactive part upon that man to say, I need to reach out, and I need to find some support. It also could be just as simple as starting to call your friends up more, your male friends, and simply get in the habit of at least talking on the phone on a regular basis. I mean, that can make a huge difference. And then, of course, socially distancing, if you can get together somewhere where you can stay safe, but at the same time be able to actually see each Sure. other. Certainly that can happen too. And then there's a number of Zoom groups like the one we do. We started out face-to-face. When pandemic hit, we just moved immediately to Zoom, and been doing that for now, since last March.
Yeah. It's been a while.
Yeah, and there are a lot of other groups like that out there. But I think a man's got to reach out to another man and maybe say, hey, are you aware of this? This is something that I really am trying to seek out, some kind of particularly, I think, male socializing.
It is sort of ingrained in women, almost growing up, to reach out and call a girlfriend, or we go to the bathroom in groups. That's just how we do things. So I can understand it might not be the same for men. Looking back, since you've been doing this, what might be the biggest benefit that you've seen that maybe you can explain?
Well, of course, personally for me, it's hugely gratifying, and I've grown to. I mean, I now know a number of these men, particularly in the Retire group, and really love them, and we really support each other. But then also to hear them say how glad they are that we're doing this, that they see the value of it. And they, you know, they thank me for that. They say, I appreciate you putting this together. And, you know, we come from all walks of life, but all of us are retired. You know, some of us, you know, I mean, just different backgrounds, and black and white, and Hispanic, and, but what we have in common is we're all retired, we're all men. Sometimes we're talking all about health issues the entire time, but then we also talk about politics and everything else, and just try and keep it, we don't get into the divisiveness. We try and stay away from that.
Sure.
But the most important thing is simply that connection. And so it doesn't really matter what we're
Sure.
talking about, it's just coming together. Right now we do it on Zoom. We look forward to when we can get back together so we can be together and hug and affirm each other.
So as maybe we wrap things up, Dan, any suggestions, you know, you can make for older adults, men specifically, as they think about how they might begin to reach out? I know we will put some resources up when this episode of 50Forward Exchange is over, but, you know, 1 or 2 tips if somebody's on the fence about how they might get started. Just pick up the phone and call a friend, or
Yeah, call a friend or call me. I mean, you know, I'm certainly open to talking to any man, particularly older man,
Okay.
that's seeking help.
Great.
And we're all in this together. So, yeah, so I would look forward to being of any sort of assistance I could to any man about that.
Well, you've been such a wonderful resource to so many, and such a great friend to so many, given your skill set as a coach and as a poet, and just such a wonderful man and representative of this community, and we're grateful for all that you do, Dan. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching this episode of 50Forward Exchange, and I hope that we can give you the opportunity to exchange some thoughts and turn those into action. Thanks for joining us.